Good morning, everybody. What is up? Welcome to episode 12 of Coast to Coast College Football Pregame Show. Week number 11. We have made it. We are in the home stretch of the college football season. Conference championship games are less than a month away. We are in the home stretch, the fun part of the season. We have a ton to get into today for obvious reasons. So this is not going to be a long intro today. I'm your host, Uncle Shally, Bill Shawcross. Introduce the other two guys that make this show good. Make the show fun and what it is. Mr. Cottrell Simpson, my Buckeye brother from another mother. How's your Saturday going so far, sir?
Pretty good. I'm the fortunate one here, regardless about how you guys feel about the games that you guys have in front of you. I feel like I'm the only one that is really going into the week stress-free. I'm sure Alex expects Oregon to win by 50 million by whoever they're facing, but pretty stress-free. I got the Michigan State Spartans on the docket for today. So that should be an easy win with everything going around their entire university, not even just the football team anymore. So feeling good.
They've given up on life there. But last but certainly not least, our West Coast guy, Mr. I Black, Alex Elmore, checking in from Oregon this beautiful morning. It's very early out there. How are you doing, sir?
I got the biggest cup of coffee I've ever had in my life, but I'm ready to go. It's 11:11. I've been waiting for this weekend the entire season. I mentioned this back on our first show. November 11th was the show I was waiting for. Oregon, USC, that's the matchup I've been waiting for, and I finally got my wish, and here it is. And we finally get to have Bill actually talk about Michigan with a purpose today, so that's going to be exciting. And I can't wait to dive into it, boys, so let's get to it.
Yeah, so, I think at the beginning here, we all thought that Oregon-USC game was going to have a little bit more luster than it did today, but we are here nonetheless. We do have a full show, so we are going to hop right into it because we want to get done on time, and, we have our normal slate. We have our recaps from last week, our previews for this upcoming week, for the kickoffs that start around noon today. College Football Eliminator, which is starting to get a little testy. We'll have our pick'em as usual, our upset alert. We're going to start today with the Michigan situation with Harbaugh. We're going to get into it now. Just kind of been somewhat of a final turn of events finally in an actual resolution. If it's going to stand up, we don't know. We probably won't know real close to kick. But Jim Harbaugh has been suspended for the final 3 games of the season for coaching on the sidelines. He can still coach during the week. It's a very, I would say, unusual suspension. Depending on what side of the situation you fall on, has a lot of people scratching their heads. It's to say it's going to be messy and it's going to continue to, I think evolve. I think that's the one crazy thing about this whole situation. Every day, me and Cottrell have joked about it every day. It seems like, it takes another crazy left turn or right turn. And we'll probably have another one here before we even get off the air. So, but he's been suspended. He's allowed to coach during the week. He's just not allowed to be on the sideline during the weekends. Big Ten commissioner said it was a suspension to harm the school, not the coach. I don't believe that for a second. I think the timing and the way it was handled, I think was gutless and cowardly. He made sure on purpose that he waited till the team was up in the air to suspend him and leak it to Pete Thamel from ESPN and a bunch of other people before he even called anybody at Michigan and let them know. But here we are. So this is what we've been waiting for a while. If, like I said, if it's going to stand, I think is another whole discussion, but we're just going to get into, what we know so far, and we can comment on the fact that he has been suspended. So, you guys can jump in whichever order you want to, and just talk about your reactions, what you think is going to happen, play out, so forth and so on. I think this kills the kids for today. Cottrell asked me that last night, and I was very blunt about it. I think Penn State's going to win today now. This is unavoidable for them to see. I know a lot of them have been very good at staying off Twitter and kind of staying away from the noise, but this has become a national thing now. So very curious to see how they play today. I know they're going to play for him, but I think this might be in that environment of Penn State at Happy Valley. It's probably going to be too much for them. So I don't have high expectations for this game now today. Cottrell, Alex, hop in here.
I think for me, I feel like I have a pretty standard, take about the entire thing. The whole sign stealing thing as a whole, I do think it's dumb. I think it's, it happens across the sport. That's been my take from the beginning, is that sign stealing quite literally happens everywhere. Now, I also think it's dumb that you can send over, if you find any signs, I know Michigan brought up Ohio State, Rutgers, all those guys like sending over signs. And you'd think that that's a competitive advantage and that should be against the rules, but that's perfectly legal. But you can't videotape, in person other team sidelines. I mean, it's the same as watching film. That's been my take on it the entire time. Now, with that said, I mean, although it's against the rules, if that's what, although I think it's a dumb rule as well, if those were the rules, I mean, that's got to be what you abide by. So um, I understand why the Big Ten has really rushed this decision, just because the guy's been getting so much pressure from everybody around that conference as a whole. Not saying it's right, but I understand what they're trying to do. Ultimately, I think they put this out there as them trying to do the right thing. I think Michigan is going to get their injunction. Harbaugh is going to for sure coach this week. I think he for sure coaches next week as well. And then it's ultimately going to be up to that judge, because they have to have this next case happen within the next 14 days. So I think that next judge is going to determine if we're going to see Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines for that game. But I think it gets real interesting if the fact is that they ultimately uphold that decision, because if he gets suspended for 3 games at that point, then he'd be missing the Ohio State game, potentially their first college football playoff round, and then the national championship, unless they say we just want you to miss 3 regular season games, and then he just missed Ohio State in the first 2 games next year. So it'll be really interesting to see how the whole thing plays out.
Well, kind of like Justin just said, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like, how do you suspend somebody without an investigation? I mean, maybe you guys are much more in tune with the situation than I am. For me, this is just drama. I'm over here eating my popcorn, enjoying the whole thing. I think it's a bit ridiculous. I mean, like I said, make better signs, switch up your signs. The Ducks have been switching up their signs for years now with different, distraction signs and all things like that. And ultimately, it's going to go back on the NCAA, because it's so simple to fix this problem, is just get headsets on the field. The NFL coaches have said it, like, you want to eliminate this problem, add headsets. It's not that big. It's not that big a deal. It's not that big of a financial risk. It's nothing. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think it's a terrible move if they end up suspending him for the college football playoff, if they were to make it, just because that puts an asterisk next to anybody who wins it if it's not Michigan. Like, oh, what is Michigan the better team? But they didn't have their coach. So I think it's really kind of a slippery slope that they're walking on right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it going forward.
So a couple things. Justin Lauder brought up the point that I think a lot of people, that are fans of the team or close to the program are kind of upset about. So the NCAA, Michigan, I think the frustrating part is Michigan's really not allowed to comment on any of this because they are under the NCAA investigation. The NCAA investigation, has already said that they found no, links between Connor and Jim Harbaugh. Big Ten has now echoed that. So, the Big Ten then came down with punishment that only punished Jim Harbaugh. So it's a little contradictory. And I think the biggest thing that a lot of people have their hands up about is they just wanted it to play out in due process. And everybody's like, okay, well, that doesn't change anything for this year. Then if they win, they still get away with it. Wrong. Because if the NCAA comes down and hammers them, and they can go back and they can take things away. We've seen them take things away. We've seen them vacate wins on college programs, on basketball programs. They took Reggie Bush's Heisman away. They have the power to do that. So it's not like Michigan's going to get away with something and they're just going to run down and be like, okay, well, now he's just going to get suspended for 4 games next year and it's a slap on the wrist. That won't be what happens. If it's that bad and they can make those links and they want to punish the university, they can go back and say, hey, you're vacating so-and-so games last year and your national championship isn't valid. So the whole due process argument, they don't have a leg to stand on. And that is why a lot of people are very upset. Tony Petitti flat out caved to the pressure from a group of 4 or 5 coaches and ADs within the Big Ten. And the funny thing is, it's 4 or 5 coaches in the Big Ten that don't matter. This didn't come from Ohio State. This didn't come from Penn State. It's not coming from teams that are going to be harmed from this or going to get screwed out of a bowl game or something, because they already lost to Michigan by 40. It's not going to change anything. The fact that, they've admitted that they found nothing different than the NCAA, and again, he came out and said, we don't want to hurt the kids. And it's a university penalty. It's not a Jim Harbaugh penalty. Well, he didn't do anything to the university. He could have fined the university. He could have put other sanctions on the university for right now. He didn't. The only person he singled out and suspended was Jim Harbaugh. So there's a lot of contradictory, voice and a lot of talking points, even with his own statement that directly contradict themselves. I do think part of it is exactly what Cottrell said. I think he did this almost in a way hoping that it gets the TRO, and he could turn around to all those ADs and coaches and say, I did what I could do and I did something, and, I can't overrule a judge, and now we just have to wait for the NCAA, and whatever they decide to do is they decide to do, but I did what I could do. I think that's a easy way for him to save face. I also think if you read anything of Michigan's filing, this is going to be kind of a scorched earth type thing. I don't know if I think some people within the Big Ten thought they were going to take this kind of sitting down, and they thought maybe a fine and Michigan will just write a check. I knew this was going to get bad when Ono came out publicly and backed Harbaugh. They went and hired the lawyers they hired. They were going to get dug in on this. It's going to be an interesting winter. This is nowhere near over. We know how long NCAA investigations take. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to come out about a lot of programs. They apparently are sitting on a ton of stuff, and if that all comes out in a trial, this is going to be. I would be very surprised if this time next year, Petitti is still the Big Ten commissioner, because the way he handled this directly is going to end up dragging the entire conference through the mud, and it's going to draw other teams into it, and they're going to get dragged through the mud. And it's all because, he wasn't really just kind of capable of doing his job. Michigan's going to get punished. And I've said it from the get-go. If, they have the evidence of people sitting in the stands and videotaping and all that crap, at the end of the day, I don't think it's that big a deal, but they did break the rules. And if they did, they should be punished. I've been very consistent with that. But nobody has either publicly stated or leaked or anything saying they have that. So it's just going to be a mess. And the fact that we just didn't go through due process, I think is the biggest, the biggest issue with it for everybody that's close to the program or, a fan. I mean, and we've seen it in other parts of society where it's a mob mentality. It's, somebody gets accused of something, you're guilty until you're proven innocent. And that's just not the way this country is supposed to work. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Like I said, I think we'll probably have an update on this before we even get off the air in regards to that TRO being either, approved or denied, and see if he coaches today or not. So,
I think the one thing, though, that I keep pushing back on is the Big Ten has done some of their own investigations. It's not like they just made this completely up out of the blue. They have information about this, and they have proof that this was what was going on. Like the Big Ten has said that they've been given videos, they've been shown photos and different things like that. Just because they haven't made it public yet doesn't mean that they don't have this information. So I don't think that they're just blindly going off of just the hearsay of everybody in the conference. So that part I do disagree with. I definitely think they're guilty of it. I think Connor Stallions has already shown you that he's an absolute lunatic, and I don't think anyone will be surprised if it comes out that Connor Stallions is the one who has done all of these things. Now, with that said, I'm not saying Jim Hart knew about it. I'm not saying that he was the one who's condoning or anything like that. But at the end of the day, Jimmy mentioned in the comments, and that's how it is in the NCAA bylaws, the head coach is responsible for the football team. So if that was going on in his program, then there's a punishment to be had for it. Now, doing it right now in the midst of the best stretch of the season, very questionable timing with it. Doing it on Veterans Day where they can't have their day in court. They got to go through different hoops to make sure that they could potentially have Harbaugh on the sideline of their first real matchup of the entire season. Very questionable timing there too. Not arguing that at all. Like, I understand as a Michigan fan, I'd be very upset about how everything is playing out. But at the same time, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I can't just say the Big Ten commissioner is just purely acting off of, what he's heard from other coaches. They have evidence. They've come out with different documents saying that they've received different evidence. We just don't know what it is yet.
Correct. I'm not saying they don't have evidence. I'm saying they don't have evidence saying that he knew. They've already come out and said that everything they've been given has shown that he didn't know. In regards to institutional control, again, agreed. That is an NCAA rule, though. That is not a Big Ten rule. The NCAA can suspend Jim Harbaugh for that. I don't know what part of this gene hasn't gotten through his head yet. The NCAA can suspend Jim Harbaugh for lack of institutional control. The NCAA or the Big Ten cannot. It is not in their bylaws. That's also part of this. He outstepped his boundaries.
The sportsmanship bylaws. What they're talking about. So they're saying that Harbaugh had a competitive advantage from videotaping other teams' sidelines. That's what the suspension stems from.
You are saying that a coach that you're agreeing didn't know about the sign stealing, or you can't prove benefit from it, is getting suspended under a sportsmanship clause for not being sportsmanlike. You're literally contradicting yourself in the same statement. That is where, again, that's where a lot of the anger comes from on this. If the NCAA would have came out and be like, hey, you don't have control of your program where you're sitting down for 3 games, there's nothing they could do. Because even if the NCAA came out and admitted, which they already have, that he didn't know, he's still responsible for what happens in his program. And that's ultimately where this is all going to land. And nobody's arguing that fact. I haven't seen anybody from Michigan argue that fact. That's ultimately what's going to kill him in the future is going to be the lack of institutional control. That being said, all these people like Gene and all these crazy people on Twitter being like, oh, death penalty, blah, blah, blah. Institutional control is a level 2 sanction. It most of the time results in loss of practice time, a fine, or maybe some scholarships. That is not alone going to get them to vacate wins or give back a Big Ten championship or anything like that. It's people talking about the situation who haven't done any reading, who don't understand the actual rules and what's going on. So that's why I'm not going to get in these trolling arguments going back and forth with people. So that is the basis of the TRO injunction that they filed, that he outstepped his power and outstepped the bylaws of the Big Ten. And we'll see if a judge agrees or not. If they do, then they'll grant it. If not, then he's suspended. It is what it is.
Well, let's also put it out there who they're going to for this TRO. The guy's a Michigan alum, and he played on the Michigan football team in the 70s. So
that is not.
I think you have a more than fair shot of ultimately getting this to pass.
He actually recused himself, and that is not who that looked at the TRO last night into this morning. That Connor guy did not look at it. It went to another woman. She is also a graduate of Michigan, but she also just shot down Michigan 2 weeks ago on another TRO for some union things.
For some union things is not football.
Well, no,
a lot bigger.
Yeah, union thing. I think a union in regards to the university and students is probably a bigger situation in her mind than a football program.
Yeah, but not when you have all these millions of dollars coming into play. Like Michigan is going to be on the verge of losing probably north of $10+ million if this whole thing goes south.
I don't think $10 million is going to be anything that anybody at that university shakes a stick at. But
I mean, I get it, but $10 million is $10 million no matter how much money you're making.
I get it. So we're 21 minutes in. We got to go. If this updates between now and then, we will see what happens. I saw a big noon kickoff from Fox. They said, from what they've heard come out of the courthouse, they expect Michigan to be granted their temporary TRO. Harbaugh will be on the sidelines for today. They are the only ones reporting that so far, though. So I'm not gonna put it out there right now. But let's get into last week.
Pete Thamel basically said that the request is still being looked at now, and the ruling should happen soon. So still a chance that Harbaugh would coach today, and that was 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. But let's get into last week. Let's get into the rankings. Let's get into the fun stuff. Let's not make this a whole Michigan show because we're still got to talk about them later. Top 4 did not change. Actually, I don't think anything changed. In the top
10.
Something did because Penn State was 11 last week. Oklahoma moved out.
Oh, yeah.
So the top 8 pretty much stayed the same. Ohio State stayed at number 1 after, I don't think anybody would say their best performance of the week or the year, excuse me. Georgia looked good again, has another good game, another good team today. Michigan, we just talked about, is at Penn State. Florida State, Washington, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss. Penn State is your top 10. Louisville pulled off a come-from-behind miracle on Thursday night. Almost made Gene look like a fortune teller. Still got a bunch of super dog points though, so he was spot on that one. What do we think? Again, with the top 8 or 9 not changing, I don't know how much we have to really discuss, or unless somebody's really upset about something somewhere else. But obviously we're gonna have movement after today. So,
I mean, I think my biggest issue right now is like Missouri sitting there at 14. Like, I get it. They didn't play bad against Georgia by any means. But if you look at their resume, if you put that same resume on a school like, I don't even know, but you put it on a different school that's not in the SEC, we're not talking about them being ranked 14th. Like, them still being there, only dropping 2 spots from losing to Georgia, I think that's crazy to me.
Why is that crazy?
They haven't beaten anybody. They haven't beaten anybody all season. You got teams like Arizona that have some higher quality wins, and I'm not saying Arizona's for sure. You put them on neutral field, anything like that. But Oklahoma has a win over Texas. That's a better win than anybody that Missouri has. They both have 2 losses, and I get it. Oklahoma has lost 2 out of their last 3, so that's ultimately why they're there. But I'd have Missouri a bit lower, even just as a 2-loss team. I don't like their resume. I think they're getting a little too much love.
Well, see, that's where I kind of disagree with you, because I think Missouri played Georgia phenomenally last week. I mean, it was a 1-score game going late into the 4th quarter when a couple interceptions came into play, and we'll talk about that when we recap that game. I'm actually not mad about the Missouri pick at all. I'm a huge Iowa supporter, and that's the one that shocked me the most, was having Iowa jump up to 22 from being previously unranked, especially with how dismal that offense has looked. I mean, yeah, the defense only gave up 7 points, and defense is looking fantastic, but offense, you got to score points to win. And there are a few of those defenses that are not in the top 25 that I think would shut Iowa out. So them being in the top 25 was a bit of a shocker to me, as much as I support them. And Arizona, well-deserved 21 spot ranking. In the last couple of weeks, they've been one of the hottest teams in college football, and I'm glad to see them getting the respect that they deserve on that one.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the bottom, Kansas State lost a really tough game in Texas. I don't know if I really have an issue with them holding on to 25.
No problem.
North Carolina jumping back in, I have a problem with. They lost 2 games in a row badly that they shouldn't have. I don't think they beat somebody last week with like 3 wins. I don't think that justifies them getting back up into the top 25. I'm going to be consistent. You don't see USC on this list, and I don't think they should be. I don't think Notre Dame should be either. They haven't beat anybody good. The 3 really good football teams they've played, they've lost all 3 of them. I don't think beating up on people you're supposed to justifies you being on this list. I think Arizona, I think that's great for that program. Oklahoma, I think, should be lower, honestly. It's other than, but I mean, at this point, I think we're kind of nitpicking too. So, Oklahoma's, for lack of a better term, in regards to national things, their season is over. 2 bad back-to-back losses. But it's really starting to kind of come into focus here. We'll get into some of these big matchups later today, but we're kind of starting to whittle down to the top, 6 or 7, maybe 8 teams that have a shot at this going into the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, and that's what makes this part of the year so much fun. So that's top 25. There will be movement. There will be guaranteed movement after this week, which is good. There'll be some shakeups in that top 10 for better or worse, depending on who you're a fan of.
All right, where are we going to now?
We're going to go to recaps. And this game, this was a great game. It didn't start out looking that way. This started looking out like this was going to be a Texas romp. If you watch the first quarter and a half, and then Kansas State and Will Howard and the boys kind of finally settled in and started moving the ball. Malik Murphy came out on fire in the first half, and the second half looked like a completely different quarterback. Jonathan Brooks did his thing as he always does. Donnie Mitchell had a great game. Kansas State, though, battled back, had a chance to win the game. Went to overtime, forced Texas, to kick a field goal, and then, Kansas State, fourth and goal, went for the win instead of kicking the field goal to go to another overtime.
Bill, I hate to interrupt you, but we got some breaking news.
Oh boy. Breaking news from the breaking news man.
There will not be a ruling today in Jim Harbaugh's request for a temporary restraining order. This means Jim Harbaugh will not coach today at Penn State. The person familiar with the court filings tells ESPN there's an in-person hearing on November 17th at 9 a.m.
Well, there you go. Well, I mean, I guess it all depends what happens today. I think they can beat Maryland next week without him. It'll be,
at the quite literal end of the day, this game against Penn State, of course, it matters. It's the first test of the year. But if Michigan takes care of business at the end of the season, they're going to have as good as a resume as anybody. And, of course, the Big Ten championship is going to be at stake. We're going to have to see how the tiebreaker goes if everyone, all three teams, have one loss to each other. But, yeah, Bill's right. Next week, it's all about this week, I guess. If you take care of business or just keep it competitive without your coach, and then you take care of business at the end of the season, you're still going to be in a good spot.
Agreed. So, we'll see what happens today. I think it's, again, there's part of me that think they go out and play well for him and maybe pull it off. I think there's also part of me that believes they get steamrolled now. And again, this goes back to, what I said. I think it was filed on purpose at a certain time, knowing this was a possibility, getting people, in the federal court system to do anything quickly is rough, especially on a holiday weekend. So, but that being said, back to this game. This is a great game. Like I said, Kansas State went for the win on the road. It's always hard to criticize a coach for doing that. When you think you have a team on the ropes and, you show your kids you want to go out and win. I think on the road, it's always a little bit, for me personally, I really would like to know what you guys think about this. Me personally, I think Kansas State was playing so much better at the end of the game than Texas was. I would have kicked the field goal and gone to another overtime, and took my chances there. That's me personally. I think their defense was playing better. They just held Texas to a field goal. You get the ball first. If you score a touchdown, maybe you get the stop you need. You win the game. I would have kicked the field goal and took the points. That's me personally. And a lot of that, like I said, is based upon how the momentum of the game was going and how much better, in my eyes, Kansas State was playing, than Texas. What do you guys think?
Well, Bill, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that. You literally took the words right out of my mouth. I was watching the game. The second half was a much better, more competitive game on Kansas State's part. And honestly, in that fourth quarter and even in overtime, Texas only managed to score 6 points on 2 field goals. Kansas State outscored them 23-13 in the second half. I fully believe that had they gone for that field goal in overtime to tie the game from that chip shot range, I think that we're talking about a whole different outcome to this game right now. I think Kansas State would have pulled it off. But at the same time, with Chris Klieman, he's had a great run with Kansas State. You got to applaud him for not being scared there. On the road against a very good Texas team, have him on the ropes. Malik Murphy did exactly what I said he would. He started forcing the ball downfield early, made some good plays. In the second half, Kansas State made some adjustments, forced some turnovers. And Will Howard really came out and showed out. I'm really excited for the Kansas State program and the future of this program. They have a backup quarterback named Avery Johnson, who's a freshman this year. They've been using him much like Florida used Tim Tebow his freshman year, coming in on certain packages, rolling out. He's got a great cannon of an arm and can run with anybody. So I'm excited for what this Kansas State team is going to have in the future. But this game, I feel like it should have been a different outcome. Texas did not deserve to win this game in that second half, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. But you can't be mad about being aggressive as a coach.
Yeah, Alex, and that's the part that I'm gonna harp on. I'm never gonna be mad at a coach for trying to win a football game, especially knowing that you're on the road. This is a top 10 team in the country, and you really have nothing to lose essentially. Like Kansas State wasn't in a situation where it was like, hey, we need to hang on, we need to, fight to see another day. This could have been a huge win for that program, especially on the road against a top 10 team in the country. So I have no complaints about that coach going for it in that situation. My one thing that I will say though is that especially here, I think the best player on Kansas State's entire team is Will Howard. So I'm perfectly fine with dying with the ball in his hands to ultimately go try and win a football game. Um, obviously hindsight's going to be 2020 every time. So kicking the field goal there seems like it'd be the better decision. But I personally, I try to win that football game. At some point it's got to end, and I'd rather end with the ball in Will Howard's hands than my defense out there on the field playing. Now, Kansas State's defense was definitely doing their job against Malik Murphy in that second half. And I think the interesting thing moving forward is that Quinn Ewers is back this week. Had he looked better in that second half, maybe we don't see Quinn until next week. Maybe we don't see Quinn until the Big 12 championship game. So I think it's going to be real interesting to see how Texas looks moving forward, and if Quinn is actually back to being the Quinn that we saw before that injury.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen, they announced Quinn's going to start today against TCU. So obviously it's a big sigh of relief for Texas to get through these two games and not drop a game maybe they thought they were going to. And in all honesty, man, I think you have to give Malik Murphy credit. He did his job. He got them 2-0. That was the only thing that mattered, for that program for those 2 weeks. Didn't look, actually I would say at times he looked great. He showed flashes of why they recruited him and, why he was rated as highly as he was. But, I mean, it's for a young quarterback, they all go through growing pains, and to do it in the middle of the season is not the easiest thing in the world to do, when you're kind of thrown into the limelight like that. So, but the important thing is Texas survived. They're 8-1. They're still in the thick of everything. They have everything in front of them. And we'll see how they play later today with TCU. Kansas State played a great game, came up a little bit short. Can we just talk about the play call though? Like I feel like they were going to roll them out though. Like I don't know why
play call.
I don't understand why coaches are in love with that with that that action down the goal line. Like you were literally shoving everybody into like this 6-yard box. And there's people and arms and hands and everything everywhere. I don't understand it. I don't.
It doesn't make sense to me either.
It doesn't.
Well, he went to the wide side of the field. He just tried to extend the play, get him out of the pocket. And realistically, Texas had been forcing a lot of pressure on Will Howard in the second half. They've been moving the ball successfully, but they had been getting to him. So I think they just wanted to try to extend the play. And I think they were hoping that the tight end on the backside would come open in the back of the end zone, but he just never did. So the play call wasn't a terrible design. But I think from the spot of the field where they were out, I would have called something differently.
Rollouts, in my opinion, are, especially on the goal line, always an awful idea. It just makes the job so much easier on the defense, knowing that, hey, he's eventually going to run out of field because he's not reversing field. Like Will Howard's not that guy. And then also, if we're in a zone, we're only covering, maybe half, maybe even a quarter of the end zone, depending on where the quarterback ends up. So I hate rollouts in the end zone. I get it, when you have the better athletes and you want to get them in space and get them to the edge there. But I mean, that's just not the call that I would die on.
Agreed. Next game, let's go. Georgia 30, Missouri 21. Again, another very well-played football game. I think beginning of this game, you kind of got the feeling that Georgia was on the cusp of kind of blowing it open and leaving Missouri in the dust. And Missouri hung in there. Brady Cook battled, didn't have his best game by any means. They did run the ball pretty well. You see there with Cody Schrader, 22 carries, 112 yards. That is nothing to sniff at against a Georgia defense. Carson Beck, though, another really solid game. They're figuring out how to move the ball and score points without their best player, and that's a little bit scary. I think this is again, I think it's stupid and people laugh at it, but I think this team not being ranked number one, I think Kirby Smart is mentioning that numerous times every day during the week. that they're not getting their respect. They've debatably looked better since Brock Bowers got hurt. And the Cottrell, brought up last night. He saw the report that he's actually ahead of schedule. So I mean, you're looking to get him back, maybe not this week, maybe next week or the week after. But it looks like he's definitely going to be back before they play the SEC championship game. So Georgia's starting to look like Georgia all of a sudden, really quick. Carson Beck looks very comfortable. It looks like they're opening the offense a little bit more for him. And they look like a really dangerous football team. I don't know what else to say. Cottrell, are the chances of three-peat getting a little bit better each and every week here?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a Georgia team I wasn't expecting to be as good as they were last year, and they're not. This isn't the same team that you had last year. The defense at times looks penetrable. If you have a good rushing attack, you can have some success against this Georgia team. But Carson Beck is looking better and better. Moving forward week by week. I said at the beginning of the year I thought Carson Beck was just kind of your average kind of quarterback. Stetson Bennett was also like an average talent, but he was doing everything right. He did everything in the right way. And I didn't think Carson Beck would even live up to that standard. But so far, I mean, Carson Beck is playing within himself. Georgia relies heavily on the run as well. And, they get the ball as their playmakers. Brock Bowers was obviously number one weapon. You could argue, one of the top 5 weapons in all of college football. And then you got Ladd McConkey, who, just has that veteran kind of presence that's been on these Georgia teams in the past, knows how to get open and things like that. So I think the Georgia offense is looking a lot better than I was expecting them to. But on the flip side of it, Luther Burden was a guy who has had so much success early on in this season. That first pass to Luther Burden, his touchdown pass, I was like, oh, he's going to have a day. Like, this is about to be how Missouri ultimately beats this Georgia team. They're going to attack him. They're going to send Luther deep, and he's going to ultimately burn him. But outside of that big play, they pretty much held him in check. So I got to give Georgia's defense all the credit in the world there.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia's secondary really held it down. I mean, Brady Cook did look phenomenal, completing less than 50% of his passes and still only 2 interceptions. And those 2 interceptions came on the last 2 drives of the game, trying to make something happen. So you can't really be mad about those 2 interceptions if I'm talking truthfully. And just for Justin, Ladd McConkey, he's a beast. Brock Bowers going down and him coming back couldn't have correlated at a better time for Georgia. That offense is really rolling. One thing I'm gonna give Missouri some flowers here, though. This team is going to be exciting for the next couple of years. I mean, you got Brady Cook, who could come back for a senior year next year. Cody Schrader is a senior with 2 years of eligibility left, and Luther Burden is a sophomore, I believe. So this offense over the next couple of years is going to be scary good, and I expect this team to come back and us to be talking about them a lot going forward. But Georgia is who Georgia is. They're showing why they're 2-time national champion. And when your back's up against the wall and you're playing a team with nothing to lose like Missouri, experience tends to show out, and that's what happened today, or that's what happened not today, last week. But no, I honestly love this game. It was a very evenly matched game. Both teams had 21 first downs, both converting about 40% on third down conversion. The main difference was the first interception put Georgia up 2 possessions. The second interception ended the game. Other than that, this game was beautifully played.
Are we staying in SEC country, or are we going out west? We're going out west to the no defense bowl. Washington 52, USC 42. This turned out to be, everything we all talked about and thought we were going to get last week on the show. A lot of offense, not a lot of defense. Caleb Williams, crazy game, just not enough because their defense can't stop, Pop Warner football teams. It is. I feel bad for the dude. I don't know what else to say. I think he's had another great year, and he goes out for the most part and does everything he can to make that team win. I mean, I've never seen a team average, I think they average over 40 points a game, and they have 3 losses because they just literally can't stop anybody. I can't imagine what the tension is in the locker room of that team. But Washington, we knew this was going to be their get-right game. Michael Penix Jr., solid game, not overwhelming, not exactly what I thought, their game plan exactly was going to be. But they came out and changed it up a little bit, and they decided just to run the ball down USC's throat. Dylan Johnson, career night, 26 carries, 256 yards, 4 touchdowns. Unreal.
School record.
School record. That's good for that kid. Roses to him and congrats to him. Washington gets out of USC with a big W. Haven't really heard anything out of USC yet. Everybody's seen the viral, moment with, Caleb up in the stands, kind of, crying with his parents. And, I think at some point, somebody with some common sense is probably going to get in his ear here somewhere. I don't know if he finishes the year. I really don't. And, I've mentioned it on previous shows. I am always the guy that says, kind of finish the season with your team. But this is kind of one of the first ones I would really kind of agree if he shut it down. He's going to be the number 1 pick next year. Millions in the bank already. I hate to say it, but USC is eliminated. They're not getting any better, especially defensively. But Washington.
The one thing that I kind of I'll push back on you on a little bit is that they only got 1 game left after this week. So they got UCLA next week, and then their season's over. So at that point, it's like might as well play the UCLA game.
I don't disagree with you, and it's because obviously UCLA is like their kind of their crosstown rival. But my problem with it being, I see both sides of it. Would you agree? There's no way he plays in the bowl game.
Oh, absolutely not. What bowl are they going to be in? Capital One?
No, they're not getting the Capital One bowl.
I don't know what.
Maybe
they're not going to. They're not going to be in a. They're not going to be in a New Year's Day bowl. So I look at it like, do you play against UCLA, or do you let whoever's going to start that bowl game playing and get some reps? I could see it either way. If he decides to play UCLA against UCLA, I wouldn't be mad. There's no shot he's playing in that bowl game.
Let's be honest. I thought he was gonna this week announce that he was gonna step away from the team and focus on the NFL draft. And the fact that he didn't kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. The way his reaction was to the loss against Washington, that is a end of my college career type reaction to a loss.
I agree.
I'm super shocked that he is actually, at least as of right now, still playing today against Oregon. But that's just what I saw.
I am if their only game they had left was UCLA, I would understand a little bit more, kind of like Cottrell said. All right, I'll play the final game against our crosstown rival, go out beating our rival. No way I'm playing the bowl game. I'm getting ready for the draft. I get all that. If he's going to play today, for everything we know, unless something drastic changes here in the next couple hours, he's playing today. So,
the thought just dawned on me here. It could get real interesting over there in the Pac-12. Obviously, USC has 3 losses. They have 2 conference losses, and somehow, some way, they find and we'll preview it later. But if they find a way to beat Oregon today, then you got Washington at the top, but then you have a slew of 2-loss Pac-12 teams. And I don't know ultimately how they're going to decide that tiebreaker, just with all the wins everywhere. Because in this scenario, it'd be USC beating Oregon. You'd think they'd have the tiebreaker over them, but Utah is also a 2-loss Pac-12 team that has beat USC. So they'd be in a similar spot as where the Big Ten would be with all the 1-loss teams. But maybe that's why Caleb Williams is still playing. I still want to be a Pac-12 champion. I don't know. I'm trying to find reason with it, but I don't know.
I have a hard time believing that someone that hit the transfer portal just a couple years ago really cares about the Pac-12 championship. He followed Lincoln Riley. He followed for the offense. He followed for his chance at the NFL.
For sure.
These kids these days, rivalries aren't the same to the players, and especially with the transfer portal and how quickly kids are turning around to the NFL. The rivalries really only matter to us fans. And these players are there out for themselves, and I'm not really sure because I see no benefit in him playing going forward unless he's not planning on going to the NFL next year, which none of us I think is happening. I don't agree with him playing today. He's just going to risk injury against an Oregon defense that's averaging almost 3 sacks a game.
But I understand why you wouldn't. I understand why you don't want to play. But I think the reality of it is, if USC can find their way to the Pac-12 championship game, I think the way Caleb is shown to, at least I thought he was going to be mailing it into already. I think if they make it to the Pac-12 championship game, I think he would play.
Oh, he's definitely played if they make it to that. I just think,
But they're already a 3-loss team. Like they have no championship hopes. Like I think he would still play. That's where kind of where I'm getting at.
No, I agree. I mean, that would be his last game regardless. I mean, they're not making the college football playoff, and I think we all agreed he's not going to play in the bowl game. So, we'll see what happens today. I mean, I don't think anybody likes their chances today, but I mean, that's why you got to go out and play.
Exactly.
Oh, Cottrell, I know you're going to switch this on us later, so don't even try pulling the USC has no chance, because I know what's going to happen later.
Last but not least,
you don't know.
Alabama 42, LSU 28. Alabama's defense stepped up. LSU been scoring 40 on everybody. Only 28 on Alabama. Not going to say this officially, but it's starting to look like Alabama, might be the best team in the SEC. We're getting there. You can have a discussion about it. Jalen Milroe, very average game throwing the ball, absolute monster running the ball. 20 carries, 155 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jace McClellan, another 105 yards on the ground off 15 carries. LSU's defense has been very underwhelming all year. They're kind of the same boat as USC, not to the degree of the Trojans, but that's why they've lost games, not because of their offense. They have the best offense in the country. And Alabama just said, we're going to line up and we're going to run the ball till you stop it, and they couldn't. They ran them over all game. To score 42 points, only throw the ball 23 times, that's impressive. And a lot of those were check downs and screens and shallow crosses, stuff like that. They weren't necessarily shots down the field. I brought it up earlier with Kirby Smart. I don't think there's a better motivator of a football team than Nick Saban in the country. He's probably the best one to do it. People on this show, people on our other show, people nationally wrote this Alabama team off around week 3, week 4. Especially after the Texas loss. They've done nothing but beat everybody in front of them and look better and better each and every week doing it. I know LSU is not a great typical LSU team with, 3 defensive linemen getting ready to get drafted and 2 linebackers and, all that. But they do have one of the best offenses in the country. And Alabama's shutting down. It's another huge win for them. It's another ranked win. I thought Georgia was going to walk through the SEC championship this year. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that is something that needs, that part of that chaos, I think needs to kind of be introduced here. Because I think there's a chance if Alabama beats Georgia, then I don't know what happens there. But in regards to the game, Alabama just looked better. They were at home. They looked like a more complete football team. What do you guys think? LSU, again, not a Brian Kelly fan, never have been. The dude just never wins a big game ever for any team he coaches. But Nick Saban's got the boys rolling. What do we think about Alabama going forward? What do you think about the game? And are we on a collision course for chaos in the SEC, boys? Is that where we're headed?
Go ahead, Cottrell.
The big thing for me right now is that with the way that this LSU team looked, I thought, they had the perfect game plan coming in. You get Jaden Daniels on the move, you have him attack that defense, make them account for him as a runner, and it was working out very well for them. The problem was Alabama came in with quite literally the exact same game plan to go up against that LSU defense. They had Jalen Milroe on the move, and he had a career kind of day on the ground. 4 touchdowns on the ground is absolutely insane. And I think if this is the way for that Bama offense to be successful, limit what you want Jalen Milroe to do with his arm and, just take what the defense is giving you. So I think the way that Alabama is looking right now offensively, this is how they're going to need to move moving forward. I think their offense like this is the perfect answer to what Georgia likes to do defensively. So right now, if Bama and Georgia line up on the field, I'm probably picking Alabama just because I know that, that read option and running the QB powers and things like that, getting Milroe on the move is going to be Georgia's kryptonite this season. So I also think it's insane that Malik Neighbors accounted for pretty much 80% of of LSU's receiving yards. Obviously, a kid's super talented, one of the best in the country. But you know how great he is. You know that Alabama has Kool-Aid. They got Caleb up top, and he still found a way to have 170 yards. So this is a good win for that Alabama team.
Yeah, I mean, this game was an awesome game. Honestly, Nick Saban and Alabama pretty much just watched that Ole Miss LSU game and hit copy and hit paste. Because that's exactly what Ole Miss did to beat LSU earlier in the year was they ran the ball down their throat, 49 rushes for 6.5 yards per carry. That was Ole Miss against LSU. Alabama kind of said, all right, cool, watch us do it, but we're going to do it a little differently. And they utilized Jalen Milroe on the rollouts. And like I said, with the QB powers, he had more rushing yards in this game than he had the entire season combined. And honestly, if Jalen Milroe plays like this the rest of the season, utilizing his arm talent as well as his legs and unpredictability, I don't know if a team can beat Alabama, including Georgia. I mean, this looked like the most complete offense. This is the most complete their offense has looked all season, just from what I saw. You know, Jalen Milroe was making decisive decisions. He looked for his first target, looked for a second target, didn't see anything open. He didn't wait around to see something else open up. He just took off, got the yards he could, and kept the ball moving. So I honestly really liked what I saw to Jalen Milroe. I'm not an Alabama fan. I'm not a Nick Saban fan. I am not a Jalen Milroe fan. But if I had to make a hot take for today's episode, it would be that Jalen Milroe for Heisman 2024. That's my lock for next year. If he plays like this continuously, that's the kind of caliber I saw out of him. But Jaden Daniels, he did everything he could. Late, that dirty hit late in the game that Alabama took him out. He was in concussion protocol. That's not something that belongs in this game. I do not approve of that. Hopefully he's, well and ready for this week's game. I haven't seen the updates on if he's playing or not today. I should probably look into that.
He's going to start.
Okay, good. And I'm glad that is because it's not like Riley Leonard's situation where it's his ankle and it's going to hurt his mobility. It was more of a concussion issue. So I think that won't hurt him today at all. But, LSU, they did fight. I thought this was the one game I had circled on Alabama's schedule that I was certain they were going to lose, even more so than Texas due to the fact of Jaden Daniels' playmaking ability. But Jalen Milroe looked like someone who should be in the Heisman conversation this year. I wish we'd seen more of this from him earlier in the season. Maybe Alabama wouldn't have that loss on their record.
And now that we're here, I know this isn't on the docket, but I have to ask, do you guys feel like the Heisman race is like completely wide open now? Do you think Penix Jr. took it back? Like, obviously Washington, they ran the ball super well last week, but like, where do you guys feel on the Heisman right now?
I think he's still the leader. I think, I think Bo's going to have a chance today to put up probably some monster numbers. I just don't know how much they're going to get weighted because they're going to be against USC. I've said from the get-go, I don't think, JJ is, should probably be where he is in those rankings. But that being said, he's having a great year. If they somehow win today and he has a huge day, I think that becomes very interesting. I think it's Penix to lose, though. I think he would have to, either he would have to play badly down the stretch or Bo would have to go out of his mind to probably win it. But again, Bo's going to get another chance head-to-head, too. So I think that will weigh heavily in. Other than that, I don't know. I don't know if there's anybody on the outside that we're not looking at with 3 weeks to go, like that could kind of pull the Devonta Smith, like coming down the stretch and just passes everybody and wins the award. I don't know if that person's out there.
Well, for one, I think right now, Justin, Alex, you're gonna love this. I think it's Bo Nix is to lose. I think Bo Nix is your Heisman front runner at the moment. I think with the way that Michael Penix Jr. has looked the last few weeks, obviously he looked great against USC, but as great as he looked in that game, those numbers didn't really show exactly that Michael Penix that we've seen throughout the entire year. They were very successful with running the football. Like, you would think the game against USC, they would have had the opportunity to have Michael put up like 400 yards or so, and that just wasn't the case. I think Bo Nix right now is been the most consistent. He didn't have that one sloppy game like how Penix Jr. did in that 15-7 game they won earlier this year. And so I expect Bo to put up crazy numbers today. I think he's your leader in the clubhouse. I think, to your point, Bill, about the Devonta Smith thing, I think obviously this being my team, I'm going to throw his name out there, but I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the guy that's gaining a lot of traction right now. And I don't think he's going to necessarily win it per se, but I think he's doing enough to potentially earn his way to New York. Neighbors is having the better season, but I think with Ohio State having the success that they're having, especially if he continues to put up games where he's 10 plus receptions, 100 yards, touchdown or two in a game, like he has the opportunity to do today against Michigan State. I think that would be a guy who could sneak in and get his name up there towards the end.
I mean, listen, he was my number one at the beginning of the year. I'll go down this for you real quick. Current odds: Penix Jr. and Bo Nix are both plus 160. Jordan Travis is hanging around at plus 800. Beck is plus 1200, and then Marvin and JJ are plus 13.
Which is crazy to me. I don't know how Jaden Daniels isn't on that list. This is the reward for the best football player, not the best player on the best team.
I get it, but it's always tied to it. It always has been, and that's why Caleb Williams. That's why Caleb Williams' name was dropped off the list. And that's why I said I think that the rematch with Washington and Bo for Oregon, I think that game is going to be extremely huge for both of them. As long as they both, if Oregon holds serve and they, Washington rolls in there with undefeated, Oregon 1 loss, I think that game ultimately can end up deciding it. I think Marvin's game last week kind of hurt him. I know he scored 2 touchdowns, but he had 80 yards or not even 80 yards receiving.
Yeah, he had 50 yards.
Yeah, something like that. I think that, but again, he has a big game left too. I mean, and JJ has, this week, Maryland next week's not really going to matter. Then he's got Ohio State too. So Jordan Travis, I guess, is maybe the sleeper there, but I don't, I don't know.
I don't give him the style points to do it. Like, I don't think he has that matchup to do it.
It's that, and you're going to have a hard time telling me or convincing me, that he is more deserving than either Bo or Mike. And that would be tough for me if you're going to go quarterback way. So, and I agree. I don't think he's going to do it. He's not going to do it style wise. So that would be a tough sell for me. But we'll see what happens down the stretch. I mean, it's according to Vegas, it's close. I mean, those two are deadlocked. And the thing with the Heisman is you have wild swings every week. I mean, it's Michael Penix a couple weeks ago was minus money. And now he's back on the plus side, and Bo Nix is probably 8th, and now he's tied for 1st. So,
he was plus 1,200 at one point.
Yeah, this time of year when you have, big teams playing big games every week, your performance every week matters. So,
Alex, how do you see it before we move on?
Well, I picked Penix to win the whole thing at the beginning of the year, and this season he has not disappointed. I also had Bo Nix in my top 5 as well. He has not disappointed. For me, though, I think Bo Nix has got to be in the front runner, mainly because Michael Penix, that 15-7 ugly win, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions against a far inferior team. That kind of performance, even in a win, really kind of sticks with the voters. So I feel like, especially with these teams playing similar opponents, comparing Bo Nix versus what he does against USC today, what Michael Penix can do against Utah today, I think comparatively we're going to see a much more clearer picture of who should be that front runner after comparing stats comparatively between the quarterbacks and their respective opponents. So, like I said, Michael Penix is still kind of in the lead seat for me because I've had him there all year. So it'd be foolish of me to take him out now this late into the season. But Bo Nix is right on his heels, and I would not be surprised if today the rankings switch up for me anyway.
All righty. Let's go to Eliminator. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I know you guys see this comment here by my man Bruce Harper. Have no clue who Bruce Harper is, but he says, could you please say if Ohio State could beat Michigan if Michigan is prevented from cheating? Bruce, the answer is absolutely. They're going to do it this year. Michigan can't cheat their way to a win. They're going to do it. You can take that to the bank, Bruce.
Bruce, don't take it to the bank because Ohio State had our signs last year and got boat raced.
See, don't buy into that. No Connor, no win. That's what I'm saying, Bruce.
We'll see.
You saw what happened before Connor. You saw the BC era before Connor era.
Yeah, it's more like starting to look like after Day era or after Urban Meyer. I mean,
you should just suspend Ohio State and Michigan, and everyone in the country would be happier.
It's not true.
I guess that's probably Oregon's best hope to make it to the college football playoff.
Alex, you just walk into these things, dude. Like,
I know you're new here. I know you're new here, Alex. I know.
He doesn't even go here.
Uncharted territory for you. Last time you were here.
Bruce, if you really believe that, then you don't watch a lot of college football. You're obviously an Ohio State fan, and that's fine.
Shout out to you, Bruce.
Don't worry, Bruce. We're going to find out. We're going to find out today, Bruce, because against that Penn State defense, which we're going to preview here soon, so stick around. I think we'll see what the opinions look like.
All right, so here we go. We can't get stuck on this too long because we have a lot left, and kickoff is 57 minutes. So we're down to 5, and one of these potentially, has the chance to move today. I don't think Washington's going to Florida State or Ohio State or Georgia. So,
Bill, every time you say that, you're wrong. Every time you say someone has a cakewalk, it's not a cakewalk.
All right, well,
so,
listen,
keep
I only care.
Everybody.
I'm going to.
He said, I only care about the game that I got in Happy Valley.
Correct. I promise you, I've seen Michigan State play 3 times. I think Kyle McCord could play left-handed today, and I think Ohio State would win that game. Who's Washington even playing? I don't even know.
Utah.
All right, so that's a tough game. You're fine. Everybody's fine. Let's go to the other side because this is where all the dilemma is. Alabama, Oregon, Penn State, Texas, Ole Miss. Ole Miss has Bama. They're playing for their season today. Texas is going to be
Georgia.
Sorry. That's their season today. Texas, I think, is going to be okay, especially with Quinn coming back. Penn State, obviously, we know, playing Michigan. This would be a big step towards them possibly getting back on the left side. Alabama and Oregon. Me and Cottrell see this one way. Alex obviously sees it a different way. You
can't have college commentators, world famous commentators in the college atmosphere saying that Oregon is one of their top 3 teams in the country and not have us put them on the contender side. I'm cool with Oregon, Alabama, and Texas being on that left side. I'm not just trying to say Oregon should be. At this point in the season, there's no reason we shouldn't have 8 contenders, especially with 8 talented teams with the resumes that they have. Just saying.
Alex, I hear you. I know Oregon is your team. I know they're at 6.
I know
they're at 6 right now. But if we're not moving over an Alabama team that has 3 ranked wins,
I just said.
I know. No, I hear you. I hear you. But before Oregon took their loss to Washington, I didn't hear any of this noise about Bama getting moved over, and they had beat an Ole Miss team. I didn't hear you talking about Bama switching over to that contender side. But now that Oregon is over there on the pretender side, now we get the cape for all these other schools. I'm just saying
it didn't benefit me at the time.
Alex,
see?
Hey, there you go. Alex, listen, this is very simple. I think Oregon ultimately makes the college football playoff. I've said that. I think they're better than Washington. I said the second they lost the game. They're going to have a chance
they're a contender.
They're going to have a chance to prove that. They're going to have a chance to prove themselves to get back over there. But to Cottrell's point, I can't put a team back on the contender side that has 1 win over a team with a winning record. Their only loss is Washington, which is a good loss. Don't get me wrong. They have 1 other win against a team over 500. And if we're not going to move Alabama, then we can't move Oregon. It's really that simple. It is, it's USC is not going to change my mind on that today. Everybody knows what USC is. They're a great offense with a terrible defense. When Oregon beats them today, as long as they do what they're supposed to do, USC is going to have 4 losses. That is not making Oregon jump back to the other side for me. I'm sorry.
Alex, and you ruined it for me last week because I was on your side. I said we should have moved over Bama last week. We should have moved over Bama last week if they would have gotten a win over LSU, which they did. I'd have been all aboard moving them over. And I said if Oregon beats USC today, then I'd move them over next week. But everybody was like, no, you were in uproar about it. And now here we are. I'm back on the side with Bill, and now Oregon's just going to be pretender until they're not.
I have the receipts. I said move Alabama over with Oregon. I got the text message receipts. I'm always on your side. Alabama deserves to be over there. But you know what?
And then you doubled down on now. You doubled down on moving them down now.
You 100% did. And you only agreed on Alabama once you realized that it was going to benefit you and it was going to make Oregon's case better.
That's not the point. That's not the point. That's erroneous. Erroneous. All right? Absolutely erroneous. I don't want to talk about
Justin, I was
that.
on your side. I'm not flopping here. I was on your side. I said Oregon, they beat USC, then they should move back over, regardless about how I feel about them. They beat Caleb Williams, they should move back over. But it was like, no, they just beat Cal, they should move over now. And I just wasn't on board with that.
And I'm telling you, beating USC now holds no weight for me whatsoever. They're just not a good football team. They're going to be 6-4 after today. That
honestly though.
Can't tell me that's a quality win for a team that gives up 45 points a game.
No, it's not. It's not. But
not a hater.
Like I said,
not a hater. Justin, I have Oregon in my Final Four. I'm just telling you, they got to earn their way back over there. I am an earn it, show it to me guy. That is who I am.
They've been showing it the whole year. They
didn't beat anybody, Alex.
They're in the top 10 in offense, passing and rushing. The only team to do that. Their defense is phenomenal.
They keep doing that, and I will gladly drag them back over to the other side. You're just You're not getting it today after beating a USC team who's going to have 4 losses after you guys beat them. They're not a good football team. This isn't the USC team that we thought they were going to be.
And now that we're here too, because we're talking about all these, just so you guys know, we've already kind of talked about a little bit in our group messages here. If Penn State wins today, or if Ole Miss wins today, there's no guarantee that they move back over.
Correct.
And those are going to be wins against number 2 and number 3 in the country. So it's not about hating. It's not Oregon. This is just where we're at right now.
And Alex, I'll tell you right now, I'll go down. I'll probably go for Ole Miss before Penn State, because Penn State's in the same boat. They've played one good football team this year, and they've lost. They lost to them. They lost to Ohio State. Their other best win is a 500 West Virginia team. That's not going to impress me either. So I can tell you, for all the Penn State fans, Gene, whoever, if they beat Michigan today, they're not going back either. Ole Miss has a better chance than Penn State does. So this isn't Oregon hate. I am on record saying I think Oregon makes the Final Four. They're just not going back on the left side today.
What is your definition of a contender? Someone who you think is going to be in the college football playoff, which you said 14 times this episode. You think they're going to be in there, which means you think they are a contender.
Are they in the college football playoff right now?
Gosh. Either is Washington, technically.
Technically, Washington has.
So you want to get about semantics?
Who's Oregon's loss?
Washington.
That's why Washington's on the left-hand side.
Dan Lanning. Oh, the kicker. The kicker was the loss. Not Washington beat us.
And I think the other thing too is that contenders here, we're not saying that these are just the teams that are the only ones that have a hope of making the college football playoff. That's not how we've been determining this entire time.
We're switching it up now.
The contenders are the people that have earned their way over there. Everybody on the left-hand side, they don't have a loss. That is why they're there. If you're on the right side, you have to earn your way back over. And we said that from the beginning. And at this point, Oregon hasn't done that. That's all we're saying. We're not saying that they're not contending for a national championship. You just got to earn your way back over to that side.
Sorry, guys. I'm just changing my notes that Penn State's winning today and Ohio State's losing. Got it. All right, let's move on.
All right, let's go to previews. We got to get rolling here. We are in grave danger of going over here.
We're going to be just fine.
I think we'll be all right. 13 ranked Tennessee, the Vols, and Jekyll and Hyde, Joe Milton, going into Missouri, play Brady Cook and the Tigers. Tigers coming off a loss, Tennessee coming off a win. I feel very strongly about this game. I think Missouri takes care of business at home. I think they come off the loss, knowing they played well. They play a lot better at home. And Missouri has been a tough spot out of nowhere the last couple of years for teams to go in and play. I think Joe Milton's going to do Joe Milton things today, and that's both the good, the bad, and the ugly. He managed to do all three usually in the course of one game. He's a very talented individual that way. He'll make a couple throws that'll make you say, wow. He'll make a couple that'll make you scratch your head. And he'll make a couple that'll make you scream, what the F, at the TV. That's what he does. I like Missouri, though. I think Brady Cook makes enough plays down the stretch, especially mix it in the running game as well. I think Missouri wins at home.
Okay, yeah, I can hop on the Bill train from this one. You got Brady Cook, Luther Burden, and Cody Schrader. Oh my, those are three of the most complementary offensive weapons in the country. If Luther Burden's on the outsides catching passes from Brady Cook, if it's not working, they got Cody Schrader averaging over 102 yards per game on the ground, including last week in a tough matchup against Georgia. Still was able to get over 100 yards. When you think of Missouri, for me, I think of consistency. They always have a weapon that's able to produce offensively in every single game, win or loss. They got consistency from their running game and from their passing game. So when I think of them, I think of consistency. When I think of Tennessee, I think of uncertainty. Stopping Tennessee starts at the line of scrimmage. In both losses this year, Jalen Wright has averaged under 4 yards per carry. So it all starts with stopping Jalen Wright at the line of scrimmage and keeping him at bay with the running attack. I think Brady Cook, Luther Burden, and Cody Schrader are going to run all over this Tennessee defense. I think Joe Milton, just like you said, is going to do his, what he normally does. He hasn't had a lot of turnovers lately, but he has been getting sacked a lot. He's been extending plays, but he's not throwing the ball away and not making smart choices. I do think Missouri wins outright tonight. And, when it comes to consistency versus uncertainty, you got to go with consistency every time. And that's why I'm choosing Missouri at home to not only cover the 2.5, but I have them winning outright.
Yeah, Justin, spread's 2.5, and Missouri are home dogs. I'm right there with both of you. I got Missouri winning this game as well. I think the big thing is going to be Luther Burden. I think this is going to be a bounce back game for him, and I don't know if Tennessee has an answer for him. I think Brady Cook's going to be able to throw over that Tennessee team, and you mentioned Jekyll and Hyde, Joe Milton. I think this is a game where he has a couple turnovers. I think it's going to be one of those back and forth, high scoring kind of games, but I think Joe Milton's turnover is ultimately what's going to give Missouri the win here.
Well, it's really funny, really quick before we move on, is the tail of the tape starts at the line of scrimmage. Like I said earlier with Jalen Wright and Tennessee, in the 2 games that they've lost this year, they've averaged less than 4 yards per carry. In Missouri's 2 losses this year, they've allowed the opposing team to rush for more than 4 yards per carry. And that's the only 2 games that they've allowed that is in their losses. So something's going to have to give today. Whichever team's offensive and defensive front can prevail, that's going to be the winner of today's game for sure.
Alex always got the key stats.
Thank you, sir. Woo! Look at that game.
Are we really previewing this game?
It's going to be quick, but I threw it in there because you know what?
Right.
Daddy wants to.
Oregon by a lot. I don't know what to say. Bo Nix, listen, all kidding aside, and the Eliminator and busting Alex's balls. Oregon's playing great football. They're playing all 3 phases. Offense is very efficient. Can run the ball and throw the ball. Defense, can stop the run, slow down the pass. They have a very good defense. USC is going to do USC things. Caleb Williams probably have another really good night, look good, and his defense is probably going to give up 45. So I'll take Oregon. I don't know what the spread on this game is.
16.
I will. That's a big number, but I think there's probably a better shot than not that Oregon covers that spread. Is this at Oregon?
Yes, this is at Oregon.
For shits and giggles, I will take Oregon to 16. I think with Bo being in the Heisman, the Heisman race, these are the situations and chances you get to kind of make a statement for the voters and show off a little bit, and I think they will try to pad his numbers a little bit at the end of this game. So I will go Oregon big and home. Not a slight of Caleb Williams by any means, but that defense is just awful. It's god awful. It's atrocious. I don't know what else to say about it. So I think Oregon rolls here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to make this short and sweet. Also, Oregon is gonna literally run all over USC. At this point in the season, it's all about style points. Washington beat USC by 10 last week. Oregon's going to beat them by at least 20 this week. They got to show that they're better than Washington. I think that's in the back of their mind, especially going into what could potentially be a rematch in the Pac-12 championship. Oregon's going for those style points. I honestly have a feeling that Oregon could literally hand the ball off every single play and beat USC by 20. USC's defense is just absolutely atrocious. They gave up 70% third down completion to Washington last week, with Michael Penix Jr. really being not too big of a factor with Washington's running attack running all over USC. I don't think Oregon's going to have an issue this game. It's going to be close in the first half because, well, these games always are. But ultimately, the better team's going to prevail in the second half when Oregon makes some adjustments. Caleb Williams not going to have a great second half. I do have Oregon winning 56-30. It's going to be a very high-scoring game.
So I'm rolling with the Ducks here as well. I think Oregon takes care of business here. I think this game is going to be a lot closer than a lot of people are expecting. I think the USC covers in this game. I got an Oregon win, like 13-point win. I can see this one being 51-38, something along the lines of that. I think that Bo Nix and company are going to be able to run the ball all over. They're going to do whatever. They're going to be able to do whatever they want to do. If Bo Nix wants to throw for 400 yards, he's going to be able to throw for 400 yards. If he wants to say, hey, I'm going to use my legs today and go for 100 yards rushing, he could do that as well. I think Oregon, I think you may see, I'll say this game, you're going to see less than 2 punts from that Oregon Duck offense. They're either going to score or turn the ball over. I think you see 1 punt from Oregon all night long. But I like this game to be close. I don't like USC to cover.
I think there should be an age limit on the Heisman. I don't think he should be able to be 28 and win the Heisman like Bo Nix might.
He is not 28, y'all.
I think it should be implemented. It's like the Van Wilder of college football quarterbacks. It's been
26 and a half.
Yeah, Jesus God. He's been graduating now for 4 years. All right, number 18 Utah at number 5 Washington. I know, Gene. I'm just kidding. It is. This is a game that I know at least one person on this panel would love to go a certain way. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Washington squeaks one out at home. I think Utah's defense obviously keeps them in the game. I think they'll be able to move the ball well enough against Washington's defense to score enough points and make this a competitive football game. I just think Washington wins by 3 at home. Something late, maybe even a walk-off field goal. I don't think Washington looks great in this game, though. I will preface picking them by saying that I don't think Washington looks anywhere near what they looked like last week against this Utah defense. So I don't think the upset quite happens to really make this a great day for Alex. But I think it's close, and I think there's enough hope that it probably strings Alex along into the fourth quarter. I'll say that.
Well, all right. I appreciate you giving me some hope there. But ultimately, I'm not going to say what I'm picking for this game because I am going to talk about it later in the show. But I'll give a couple details here. Here we are, Washington, undefeated, number 5 team in the country, 8.5 points favorites, arguably one of the best QBs in the country. But I'm not quite sure with how he's played over the last 3 or 4 weeks if I'm quite sold on his dominant performance that he's going to have against Utah. Utah's defense, even though they did give up 35 to Oregon, Utah's defense is really susceptible to teams that offensively can run the ball and pass the ball. Besides last week's huge rushing explosion from Washington, they've averaged less than 100 yards per game every other game this season. Their other highest total was 177 yards against a really terrible Michigan State team. So we're also going to kind of throw that one out there. But against teams with actual defenses, they haven't gotten over 100 yards yet this season. So I do think that Utah is going to kind of early I can't talk this morning, guys. They're going to counterattack early. They're going to counterattack early, give a few blitz packages, get Michael Penix under some pressure. They're going to be able to stop the run early in the game. I think Utah goes into halftime with a 3-point lead. In the second half, we're going to see a lot of Michael Penix and Utah trying to force Washington to become one-dimensional, which is where Utah really thrives when they're able to kind of target on one aspect of your offense and really kind of shut you down. So I think that's what we're going to see today. Utah's 2 losses this team came against 2 balanced teams with Oregon and Oregon State. So if Washington can maintain balanced and have the rushing success like they did last week, we're going to have a great game that Washington's going to win. However, if Utah can minimize that rushing attack and they're able to make Michael Penix beat them with their arm and their secondary, they do have a chance to pull this one out. But like I said, not going to give out too many details because I'm going to be talking about this game later on in Pick'em.
Yeah, I got Washington, and I got Washington by a lot.
Ooh.
I don't like Bryson Barnes. I mentioned that before. I get it. Washington's defense has looked very shaky, and I fully understand that. But I said last week that was the perfect get right game for them. When you have an offense that hasn't been clicking, how they were earlier on in the year, you face that USC team and you start to figure some things out. And so I think Washington did just that. And, I understand that Utah is a pretty stingy defense, but if anything, I think that Washington saw the blueprint laid by Oregon. Like, I understand that Oregon is a much better team with rushing the football, but Bo Nix was doing whatever he wanted to do against that Utah team as well. So I think that Washington takes care of business. I don't think this is going to be the blemish on their record.
All righty.
Okay.
Ole Miss at Georgia. I think this game is very cut and dry. I've gotten a few messages about if we're going to get into the Lane Kiffin thing today. No, we're not. Because I don't think we're going to have enough time. If we do at the end, I guess, we'll probably touch on it quickly. B, like anything else, I think a little bit more needs to come out about that situation. We kind of have a story right now and a recording. I don't think that
three sides to every story.
Correct. I don't think there is a full picture of what that situation truly is yet. So we'll see what happens at the end of the show. But that's the only reason we really haven't brought it up this show. And then obviously, of course, with the Harbaugh stuff, we couldn't not talk about that for another week now that that's actually been put in motion. So as far as the game, I like Georgia here. I'm picking this game. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I think Ole Miss is a good football team. I think Georgia is starting to play like an elite football team again. Carson Beck's looked great. I don't know. I think Jackson Dart will probably have a good game. I think he probably keeps Ole Miss in the game within striking distance, maybe. But I think fourth quarter, I think Georgia pulls away and puts some daggers in the heart of the Ole Miss fans. And Lane Kiffin is also in that kind of category of Brian Kelly. I can't tell you the last time the guy won a really big football game. He just doesn't. He just seems to coach different in big football games, and it doesn't look like it's anything that he's ever corrected. So I'm going to go Georgia here. Like I said, I'll talk about it more when we get to pick them in a couple minutes. But I feel very confident in a Georgia victory today.
Yeah, I'll go next here just because I'll keep mine short and simple as well. I got Georgia big. I think they cover that 10.5 point mark. I think that Jackson Dart and that Ole Miss offense will look rather pedestrian. We saw what they look like against that Alabama team. And, those big games really scare those kids over there at Ole Miss, being under Lane Kiffin. So I don't think they're going to have the horses to ultimately put up the numbers on that Georgia defense. And then offensively, I think Georgia's going to be able to run the ball as effectively as possible. So I like Georgia winning rather big here, rather comfy. I think it's a bit of a lower scoring game. I think the over-under is at 58.5. I see it being like a 31-17 kind of game where, that second half is you may see a touchdown from Ole Miss, but there's never really a moment in the second half where this game is particularly close.
All right. Well, Georgia's offense looks like it's rolling, even with the loss of Brock Bowers. And just for Justin, Lad McConkey, he's been showing out the last couple of weeks, 230 yards over the last two games. Even though he's only been able to find the end zone once in those two games, he's been a steady weapon for Carson Beck in that offense. But for me, though, the telling tale is going to be that line of scrimmage. We kind of talked about a little bit with Utah and Washington, but Ole Miss is averaging 3.4 sacks per game this season, which is good for fifth in the country. Georgia is only allowing 1.1 sacks per game, which is the fewest in the country. So something's got to give. And for me, I'm going to be watching that offensive line for Georgia versus that defensive front from Ole Miss, seeing the kind of defenses that are thrown at Carson Beck to kind of get him out of rhythm. With the 10.5 point spread, I'm a huge fan of Ole Miss. I've been high on Ole Miss all year. Jackson Dart last week against a very loaded A&M defense had 72% completion percentage with 387 yards. One thing Jackson Dart has not been doing the second half of the season that he did heavily in the first part when they were really on my contenders list was that he was running the ball early in the season. He was winning games with his legs, forcing plays out of the pocket. He would use his legs to pick up that first down and extend drives. I expect Jackson Dart and that Ole Miss team with nothing to lose today, because with already one loss, they have to win today or their season's done. They're going to leave nothing to chance. They're going to go balls to the wall. Jackson Dart's going to rush for over 75 yards. He's going to have over 65% completion percentage, which I believe is really the highest Georgia has allowed. And I think Ole Miss does cover. And I think this game does come down to a one-possession game in the fourth quarter with the deciding points happening in the last minute. I do think Georgia will ultimately win this game, but I do have Ole Miss covering. And I do have, like I said, Georgia winning probably with a field goal in the last 58 seconds of the game.
Alex is a completely different game playing out than me and Cottrell, so that would be very interesting to see.
Well, honestly, it all comes down to Jackson Dart and his legs, because Georgia really hasn't faced that mobile quarterback that Jackson Dart threatens with. So we're going to see if he actually uses that part of his game in his skill set today.
I think he's going to have to, no matter if he wants to or not.
I agree with you. That is what Georgia's kryptonite is, quarterbacks that are on the move. But I'd argue that that's exactly what they faced when they faced Auburn. And I mean, to your point, that game was very close. It was a 7-point game, and Auburn had an opportunity to potentially win that game. So I get it. You know, running quarterbacks definitely scare that Georgia team, and that's how you beat them. That's why earlier in the show I thought Bama would be the perfect matchup for them with the way that Milroe is looking. But I just think that the way that Lane Kiffin coaches and the way that his players are wired for those big games, I just don't see that being successful for them.
Bill, we're finally here, buddy.
We're finally here under, I think completely different circumstances than we all thought we would be,
a month
ago. But here we are. So number 3, Michigan, number 10, Penn State, Happy Valley. It's going to be a whiteout, but it's during the day, so it's not as bad as it would be a primetime game. But that being said, a very hostile place to go play a football game. They have one of the best atmospheres in all of college football. No Jim Harbaugh today. It's official now. He will not be on the sidelines at all. He will not be allowed at the stadium. Everything I'm reading so far looks like Mike Hart's going to be acting head coach.
No, that's who it's going to be. That guy,
Shimon Moore.
Yeah, that's what I saw. He's got the head coaching responsibilities today.
We're hearing different things. I mean, either way, they're going to be fine. Mike Hart runs running backs, and he's assistant OC anyway. Shimon Moore is the OC, and then Jesse Minter's obviously the DC. So, I think Schefter
tweeted it.
Did he?
Moore.
Okay.
Moore is the head coach.
All right. So I think the start of this game is very important to Michigan. I think if they can, withstand it and get into it a little bit, and then just kind of let their talent play out, I think they have a chance to win the football game. I've said it before. Cottrell asked me last night just very bluntly what I thought now. I think not having him there on in a very hostile environment like that, this is a very experienced group. It's a very senior Latin team. I still think it matters. I mean, head coaches get paid a lot of money to do a lot of things for a lot of reasons. And, having your coach there and being a stabilizing force is it matters. At the end of the day, these are still kids. I think not having him there is big for JJ. I know JJ actually plays usually better on the road than he does at home, which is kind of crazy. But him and JJ have a very unique relationship. So, I think it's an uphill battle today. I think if they can get into the game and not let Penn State come out with a bunch of momentum and go big early, then I think they have a shot, because I do think they're the better football team. I don't think there's any debating that. I think they're better in every category of the game. Listen, I'm not going to pick against them. I'm not, just because they are my team, but I would not be shocked at all if Penn State wins the football game today. And if you asked me that a week ago, I would have said I would have been, because I think Michigan is just better everywhere across the board. But I think it's, like I said, I think the last couple of weeks building up to it, it was kind of easy for them to stay away from it. And now all of a sudden, in the last 24 hours, he went from being suspended to, not being there at all now. And that's right in their faces. It's impossible for them to avoid it now. So.
I agree. It's definitely impossible for them to avoid it. I think The one thing that doesn't change is the game plan. I think for them,
Yeah.
they all know exactly what those first 20 players are going to be. Defensively, they know what to prepare for. And I'm not saying this to belittle the fact that Harbaugh won't be on the sidelines, because that is a big emotional difference for that team. Harbaugh is that guy. He gets his team fired up on the sidelines. He talks to players on the sidelines. So he's definitely a very active coach. But as far as game plan goes, they've done everything normal up until this point. He even traveled with the team there because the suspension didn't come out until they were up in the air. So I think everything is normal up until that point. And it's crazy as it sounds, you're going up against a top 10 team, but if there was any coach in the Big Ten that you'd want to go up against with the interim guy, I think that guy is James Franklin. So I mean, I think Michigan is, obviously this is a very, very much an uphill battle, but I still got Michigan to win this game. I picked them on Wednesday before we knew the suspension was happening. I'm still picking them now. I do think they are the better football team, and I think those kids are going to rally around the fact that they feel like there is a potential for them to get screwed, and so they're like, hey, if you want to try and take this out of our hands, we're just going to do everything that we can to ultimately, make it where you can't touch us. No Jim Harbaugh, no problem.
Look, all I gotta say is this: since the announcement of the suspension, the spread has gone in Michigan's favor a half a point. So if that doesn't tell you what I'm about to tell you, then I don't know what will. Michigan's already played this season without Jim Harbaugh on the sideline. They averaged 32 points per game. Their defense again, they were playing really nobodies, but their defense allowed 4 points per game. Okay, they've been in this situation before. If this was the first time this season they've been playing without Jim Harbaugh, I might feel a little differently. But this team's done it already. This team's already prepped for this. They've already seen what the week looks like without Jim Harbaugh. They've done this. Okay, J.J. McCarthy and Jim Harbaugh have a special relationship, but you don't think Jim Harbaugh, who is a professional, got J.J. McCarthy prepped for this game, let him know that he's the leader, the boys are going to be following him. We've seen J.J. McCarthy in a big game last year in the college football playoff, and the dude balled out. What was it, 374 passing yards or some crazy stat like that? And then on the other side of the ball, we've seen Drew Aller in a big spot against Ohio State earlier this year. Dude looked atrocious. What was it, 18 for 42? I mean, he's going to be facing a similar defense with similar pressure this week. Being home doesn't really affect anything for me. Last year, Michigan won this game 41-17. Penn State is not 30 points better, and Michigan is not any worse, even without Jim Harbaugh on the sideline. He was coaching all week. That team is prepped. It doesn't matter who's coaching on the sideline. Jim Harbaugh's game plan is going into effect and going into play. Michigan going to cover the 4.5 point spread against Penn State. Penn State is not a contender. They are not going to be contenders until probably next year or the year after. Michigan wins this soundly, and I think Michigan actually might even jump up a spot in the ranking. They're going to dominate this game so bad.
Alex, I was with you. You had me going.
Cottrell, you always gotta be a hater, man. You saw all the tweets from the Michigan players. Bet.
I did. I'm with you. I'm with you on almost everything. You brought up Penn State not being 24 points better than they were last year. Sean Clifford was the quarterback last year. That's the only part that I disagree with. I think this team is very much better than where they were at last year. And I do think this is going to be a game, but I agreed with everything else. I just had to say that because if I can you give me an opportunity to throw a dig at Sean Clifford, I'm going to take it every single time because I've been saying it for the 3 years that we were doing wire to wire. I was saying it before that. Sean Clifford is very bad at his job. Very bad.
I feel the same way about Mario Cristobal, so I get it. Speaking of, Miami sucks. Okay, next.
I will say this: if they do win this game today, I am going to be intolerable. So I forewarn all the people that took the shots at me, like Gene all week. I listened to it all and took it all. Enjoy it. I hope they win because if they don't, Wednesday's going to be funny because you're not going to get away with what you did last year and trying to get through college football review without talking about the game. I most certainly promise you we're going to talk about it Wednesday. So going to be a good game. Going to be a crazy 3 hours for me coming up here in about 25 minutes. So
and I will say that the other thing too about that is I know exactly how that feels because a couple weeks ago, we were just in the same spot where we were facing Penn State. First real test. We had Notre Dame before that, but then, we got hurt. We heard about how Notre Dame wasn't real contenders, things like that. So, Bill, I know the feeling and I support it. If it goes in your favor today, I understand, because I was intolerable after the Penn State win for sure. I know you guys aren't in our group message, but trust me and believe me, I was very much intolerable.
Oh, that was a great day for you. That was a great day for you.
Cottrell talked his shit that day. I promise you that.
I had to put the group chat on mute. It was so bad.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was a day.
So I get it. Trust me, I get it.
All right, so we got a little over 20 minutes to go. We got to get into pick 'em. We caught up here a little bit, so we will. Well, first we got to do upset alert. Upset alert.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to go first?
I'll start it off. Why not? I've been excited. Right. I've been jonesing for this upset alert pick. I'm 1-1 since we started this segment. My upset alerts are pretty on point, so I'm going to go with it today. Utah, Washington, 8.5 point spread in Washington's favor. However, Washington can't run the ball. Utah's defense will force them to become one-dimensional. And I think with Utah and their Pac-12 championships for their three-peat is still kind of in play. I think they're kind of going to go all out on us. I have Utah beating Washington at Washington by a field goal. So I think it's going to be a great game, lower scoring. I think Michael Penix has some struggles in the second half after Utah makes some adjustments. Bryson Barnes just does just enough, and the running game gets it going against Washington, and I think Utah ultimately takes that game.
How did I not know that pick was coming?
I know.
You should have known. I foreshadowed it earlier. I'm like a Marvel movie. You know what's going to come next.
Whoa.
All right, so I'll go next here, because I'm going back to the well, and damn it, they're gonna make me look good this week. I got those Colorado Buffaloes.
Maybe the same thing I am.
Plus 9.5 at home against Arizona. Look, they know about the bet between me and Gene. They've been watching wire to wire. They know if they lose this game, then we're done. They cannot get to those 7 wins that we talked about. I think Deion's going to have those boys motivated at home. They want to make it to bowl. They want to make it the bowl season. They want to start dancing. They're taking out Arizona today in a high-scoring affair at Boulder. I got Colorado winning this one. I'm going to go 38, Arizona 35. Shedeur leads the drive to walk it off.
I'm going to the same state, same stadium, same game. Listen, it's a funny thing when, teams finally get ranked for the first time. They have that week on campus where everybody tells them how great they are and how great they're doing. And, they lose focus a little bit sometimes. Now they got to go travel to Colorado. Place is still going to be packed, I guarantee you. And again, I think Arizona's on upset alert. I think Colorado, they started out really hot and they've been awful since. Deion started to take some heat. Shedeur had his Bentley booted the other day for parking it where he wasn't supposed to. These kids are ticked off. Rolls Royce, whatever. He's ticked off. He should have been a Bentley. Bentleys are better. Anyway, I think they're going to rally today. I think they're going to. I agree with Cottrell. I really think. I think if there is one really good game left in Colorado, I think you get it today. They are playing for to be bowl eligible. I don't know how much they care about, Cottrell and Gene's bet, but that being said, it could factor in. Who knows? I don't know how far the reach of this show goes. They might know about it.
I'm tapped in with Deion, man. I had to call Prime, let him know, like, hey, we need 3 more wins this season. You only got 3 games left. Let's make it happen.
So, that's that. I looked at that game and I just said, it's too much. It stuck out to me, right away. So that's where I went with it too. I got Arizona on upset alert. I do. Boulder's a tough place to play, man.
They've lost the last 3 home games against Stanford. Who else did they lose to? Was Stanford, Arizona, they lost to UCLA, Oregon State, and Stanford at home this season.
Two of those are really respectable. Yeah. 2 of those teams are very respectable.
I'm just saying, Arizona, if you did the college football ranking from just the last couple of weeks, Arizona's been one of the most dominant teams in the country. And I don't see them stopping that going into this game. But hey, y'all as upset picks. I'm the upset master, but whatever. It's cool. Justin's got it right. Arizona by
being,
15 plus.
Being 1-1, I don't know if that's master territory. That's
Y'all
50%. That's an F.
No, that's not. That is factually incorrect, my friend.
I make up my own facts for this show. Don't you know that?
Clearly.
But
and I get it. Pac-12. Pac-12. You got the smeared lenses that you're looking through there. So I get it.
Thank you, Justin. Stanford does suck, yet they still found a way to beat Colorado in Colorado. But you're right. Deion Sanders is going to find a way to get him up for this game. Next.
Bowl season, baby.
Justin says the things that I can't. I
talked to Deion. He's not hard to find, so I let him know. Got to win this one.
All right, let's get into pick 'em. Let's put the records up. God dang.
Great job, Bill. Last week we were on top of it. Super dog, baby.
Got all super dog picks. I got a million of them. All right,
I'm terrible at super dog.
That's all right. I mean, you're tied for the lead in the category that counts, though. So, I'm within a game. This is tight. We got a couple weeks to go. It's going to come down to the wire. So,
super dog's one of those things, though. You hit 2 in a row and you're in business. You get 2 outright winners, you're back.
I mean, I started the season off hitting 3 in a row, which is wild. So, and we hit the big one last week. So, Cottrell, it'd be your choice here.
I'll go first here. I'll get my picks out the way. Bill, you can go second, because we already gave our picks on Wire to Wire. We'll let Alex finish it off with his picks of the week. With I'm sure he's going to take Oregon plus the points.
I'm actually staying away from Oregon and pick them just because that's bad luck. So I'm just going to stay away from it.
Okay.
I did it for the Washington game. I can't do it anymore. Can't do it.
Okay. Hey, I get you. So first game I like Auburn plus 2.5 at Arkansas. I think this is a game where Arkansas, I get they're the home team, but I think Auburn's the better football team. Peyton Thorne and company, I think, are going to go into Arkansas, take care of business on the road. Second game I like, under 42.5, Northwestern at Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's offense is abysmal at this point, and I think their defense is good enough to hold Northwestern to a low-scoring output. So I think Wisconsin wins the game, rather low scoring, maybe 17-10, something like that. I think that's the best play of the week. Next game I got Miami plus 13.5. The line's moved up to plus 14.5 if you want to take it now, against Florida State. I think they're going to keep that game close, and Florida State really is, I think, full cruise control mode. They know that, all they have to do is win out the rest of the way, and they're in, and they have a favorable schedule left, regardless of who they see in the ACC championship game. So I think they go on cruise control a little bit too much. I think for Miami, this is their Super Bowl and their last opportunity to make something out of this season that's literally flipped out of nowhere for them. Then my last game, I like Stanford plus 20.5 at Oregon State. I think with this being a Pac-12 matchup, they're going to keep it close. Stanford's offenses look better week by week, and as bad of a football team as they are, I think they're going to be able to put up points against Oregon State. So I like them to cover that 20.5.
All right. I'm going to start in the Pac-12. I'm going to go Utah plus 9.5 at Washington. I said it earlier. I think Washington wins the game, but I think it's close. Washington has struggled with elite defenses this year. They usually find a way to win the football game, but again, I think Utah is capable to run the ball and stay in that game and keep it close up in Seattle. So I will go Utah plus 9.5 there. Second game we talked about as well. I got Georgia minus 10.5 against Ole Miss. I think they win comfortable. They pull away at the end. I agree. I think it's like a 33-17, 31-17 type game, something like that. I don't think Georgia's ever in any kind of jeopardy of losing the football game. I think they went comfortable. They kind of cruise out the fourth quarter. My last game, LSU minus 13.5 at home against Florida. Coming off that win or that loss, to Alabama, Jayden Daniels is going to play. So I feel more comfortable in this pick now. I did on Wednesday when I made it, but Florida struggled to stop people all year. I think LSU will get enough stops to win by more than 2 touchdowns because I think that offense is going to continue to roll. So, and then my super dog, James Madison, finally ranked. Getting a little bit of love, but 24.5 is a lot. I know Connecticut's terrible, but they are better than they were last year. They have put up a bunch of points on a couple, good football teams. It still got blown out, but 24.5 is a really big number. So I think Connecticut might steal me a couple super dog points late in that game. So I will go Connecticut plus 24.5 at James Madison.
All right. Well, I'll get right into it as well. My first game of the day is Oklahoma State at UCF. A few weeks ago, I picked UCF to cover against Oklahoma when Bill said that there was a cakewalk. And what did UCF do? They went in and they took care of business. They did lose to Oklahoma ultimately, but they did cover that spread. Today, I'm feeling a little bit opposite. I got Oklahoma State covering that 2.5-point favorite spread against UCF, right behind Ollie Gordon and his rushing attack. That sophomore has 1,225 yards rushing this season, 12 touchdowns. He hasn't rushed for less than 120 yards in the last 7 weeks, and that's not stopping today. They're going to run all over UCF's defense. Game 2, I've been high on Iowa all season long, even calling them for the Big Ten championship game. However, they are 1.5-point favorites against Rutgers today, and the team I've even been higher on lately is Rutgers. So I have Rutgers covering that 1.5-point spread and ultimately beating Iowa today. Iowa's offense is atrocious. Rutgers' defense is better than average and is going to be able to hold Iowa to less than 10 points today. I think Rutgers is a big play capability every single time they touch the ball. And I think Rutgers has a couple of big plays today. And I think they win around 17-10 in a low-scoring game. So as always, go with the under with Iowa. And then last but not least, there we go. Last but not least, I'm going to continue to roll with the University of Alabama Birmingham. Last week I said they had to win out in order to get bowl eligible. Trent Dilfer went out and had that team ready to go and pulled out the W. This week they're 2.5-point favorites over Navy. I don't see that train stopping. I have UAB covering the 2.5-point spread at Navy. And like I said, I am all in the rest of the season, getting UAB bowl eligible and getting Trent Dilfer in that bowl game. Then finally, we got the Super Dog. And I'm going to go, I went deep searching on this one. I didn't want to pick teams that we normally talk about. So here we go. Today, I got Nevada plus 16.5 over Utah State. Yes, I said it. Nevada is my super dog today. Nevada has only won 2 games this year, but they've won 2 of their last 3. Offense is starting to look a little better and not good by any stretch of the imagination. But Utah State, 4-5 overall, 1-2 in their last 3 games. It's for me. It's what have you done for me lately? And I got Nevada covering that 16.5-point spread against Utah State. And that's my super dog.
I like it.
I like it. We are done. We've come to the end of the show. We actually caught up, which was good. Give everybody a nice chance to go get ready and hit the bathroom, get the pregame snacks and meals ready for the game. I'm probably going to go throw up, before the kickoff for our game.
Classy.
Classy. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, on this week, or any closing thoughts?
No, man, 11-11. I'm wishing that Oregon, Ohio State, and Michigan are all able to win today, even though I secretly hate both of your teams. I hope for us all to have success, and all 3 of us to make it to the college football playoff. Other than that, I can't wait for some football today, boys.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Ohio State ain't losing. So it could potentially be ugly. It may be a game that I don't like. If they lose to Michigan State, I'm not doing the show next week. I'm letting you know that right now.
So it's good. We'll actually have a good show.
Oh man! I mean, we lose Alex. You might be on here by yourself, just talking to yourself for 2 hours. I don't know,
dude. I can do that. I have enough material up here. I could do that.
The thing is, though, Bill, is that if Ohio State loses and Michigan loses, that means that Oregon's going to have the Red X by next week. That means Caleb Williams went full Superman mode and beat Oregon.
Could you imagine if all 3 of our teams lost in the same week?
See you in 2024.
You have a black background. We'd all be wearing all black like a funeral.
So we'll try again next year.
Yeah. I mean, since we got just a little bit of time here, I don't want to get too deep in the not conspiracy, but just kind of the foreshadowing here. But I was looking at it, Bill. We talked about it in our group message. I thought there was a chance. I didn't think there was a chance this year where we would have potentially 2 teams from the same conference get into the college football playoff. And I'm not even saying it's the Big Ten, but I think there is a good possibility of that happening if ultimately you get Florida State's going to be the one team that you would need something to happen with, because I think you have SEC champ, Big Ten champ, Pac-12 champ, no matter who they are, assuming that Oregon only has 1 loss and they ultimately win it, or assuming that Washington obviously runs the table and they get in. But that 4th spot is going to be the one that gets interesting because all those teams that are in that next region all really play each other. Ohio State, Michigan, obviously. You would have Georgia versus Alabama. That's essentially an elimination game because whatever team loses the SEC championship game, they're not getting in.
Agreed.
And so Florida State's really just that one team to potentially mess everything up.
I don't think it's even a mess up. I mean, they have Miami today, and I guess they'll potentially have Louisville in the ACC championship game. I guess Louisville can mess it up because I don't know if they put a 1-loss Louisville in.
They're not putting them in over Ohio State, Michigan, or Alabama. Or
I think
Georgia.
I'm going to be 100% honest with you, and Alex is not going to like this. If whoever wins the SEC, as long as they have 1 loss, they're in. A 1-loss or undefeated Big Ten champ is in. I don't think there's any way that if Texas runs a table that they're not in. If Florida State goes undefeated, they're getting in. There's no way you could not put a 13-0 ACC champ in. I think that freezes out the Pac-12. I really do. And that's where I think the chaos ensues. Because you're at that point you're comparing a 1-loss Texas team versus whoever wins the Pac-12. Now, obviously, if Washington goes undefeated, they're getting in. But for Oregon to get in, they would have to win that game. I don't know.
They're really in the same boat. They're in the same boat, essentially.
They are. I think it gets really interesting of how they're going to compare those resumes because I think those 2 guys will be fighting for the 4th spot.
Alex, tell him why he's wrong.
You're wrong, Bill. No, here's what I got to say about this. Pac-12 has been talked about all season as the best division in college football. They've had the most ranked teams consistently from the top to bottom. They have extreme talent, and they can beat anybody. There's no way that you put the conference champion of the best division in college football not in the college football playoff. Like, that would be unheard of. Like, there would be an asterisk next to the entire college football playoff system. They do not want to put a blemish on their record going into the new format next season.
All right, but let me play devil's advocate here. I'm agreeing with you that I think Oregon wins the rematch. So that makes them a 12-1 Oregon team as the Pac-12 champ. Correct?
Yeah,
correct.
Let's assume Michigan wins today. That means you have an undefeated either Ohio State or Michigan team winning the Big Ten. They're in. We agree with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Alabama becomes your kryptonite here. Because if Alabama goes and beats Georgia in the SEC championship, they're getting in as a 1-loss team, and that makes Texas's win look even better. I don't know how you stack up against Texas at the end of the year for that final spot. And that's where it gets tricky.
If you start comparing wins and you go, nitpick the schedule, Texas will ultimately have a better resume, and as good as the Pac-12 was this year, Oregon didn't play a lot of those teams, and although they look dominant, I think that's where it gets interesting. Personally, I think Oregon is going to get in over. I think Oregon would get in over Texas, but Texas being the name, the brand, Texas football, them actually being back, I think it could come into play about, them getting in over a team like Oregon.
See, I think you're wrong. I think Oregon's prestige over the last 10 years has gotten them more prestige than the Texas program as of late.
That is absolutely insane.
No, it's not insane. You can tell by the recruiting classes. You can tell by the money. You can tell by all of it. And especially with Oregon going to the Big Ten.
None of that matters. None of that
matters. You telling me the
prestige in
NCAA
college
doesn't
football
care about money? NCAA wants to
Texas being in the playoff. Texas being in the playoff is going to make them more money. Those Texas fans, boosters, they will go to whatever lengths they want to pay for whatever they have to.
Sorry, he is. Texas is a blue blood program. It just is.
With the new divisions next year and all the teams kind of moving around to conferences, they're going to want to get some light on one of those teams moving conferences to go into next season. I think you guys
they're not thinking about any of that
they're
stuff.
They're always thinking about that.
They're thinking about this year and how they can make the most money this year.
There is no better combination than having Georgia in with potentially a three-peat champ, an either undefeated Michigan or Ohio State team, getting Texas back there, and then have Florida State back there. I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not even saying it's right. I'm just telling you that if it plays out that way, selection night for you is going to be a nightmare because it's going to come down to you and Texas. That's what it's going to come down to, because Florida State's going to be undefeated in, Michigan or Ohio State are in. And I don't care who it is, either Georgia or Alabama, the one-loss SEC or an undefeated SEC champ is in. And then it boils down to who they think has the better resume, Oregon or Texas.
And again, I think it would be Oregon that gets in. Justin brings up Bo. I think at that point, Bo Nix would be your Heisman winner. They put him in the college football playoff. But I'm just saying, like, then it gets real interesting because those Texas boosters are gonna be trying to pay whoever they can on the committee, or trying to talk with them and create those meetings to make sure their boys get in. Like, that's just what's going to happen in Texas. So I do think it gets interesting.
That's Florida State, PD. Come on, man.
Yeah, I don't know about that guy.
All right. Well, we're up against it now. Anything else to close, gentlemen?
No, that was it. I'm glad we got that out the way.
Listen, those conversations are what's going to make it fun here in the next couple of weeks. So, and what happens today will determine a lot of that going forward. So, before we leave, though, I do have to wish a happy birthday to someone very, very, very special. It is Liz's birthday tomorrow. I didn't do it on Wednesday because I wanted to wait till today because it's closer to her actual birthday. So she's off at the spa right now, getting pampered like she deserves to be. But I got to wish her a very happy birthday, and I hope she has a great weekend. And that is it for Coast to Coast this week. Go Blue, I hope. Oregon, Ohio State, I think are going to win today comfortably. So I think I'm the only one on PD. Go F yourself. And we are out of here. We're signing off. I'll see you boys next week.
See you
next week.